So hi everyone, good evening. I see some familiar faces, thank you for coming. And for everyone who are spending their Friday night with us, instead of going out and drinking with your friends. So we'll make this as fun as Friday should be, okay? So welcome to Connected Threads Asia. This is actually our the official launch of the for-purpose organization, we call it. And this is also our first official event, which is the Behind the Label. So Behind the Label, so we will be exploring how sustainable fashion businesses here in Singapore are sharing their values, common practices across the supply chain of fashion, the challenges that they are facing, and of course, how we can grow the sector. Okay, so for tonight, we will be having the documentary followed by the panel discussion, but before we proceed to that, I'm just going to give you a very brief introduction about what is Connected Threads Asia and why we are doing this. So it was, by the way, my name is Ray, and my good friend Agatha Lee, we co-founded the Connected Threads Asia, because we've met last year, and it's surprisingly we shared the same vision and aspiration when it comes to the fashion industry here in Singapore. We would want to see an industry that is more conscious and responsible, then give birth to Connected Threads Asia. So how are we going to do this? So there's two ways that the mission of Connected Threads Asia. First is the consumers. We've been organizing events previously and talked to different people and with different perspectives. And what we found out is like most of them are not really aware of who are the brands to support or like who are the brands that are sustainable. And most of them as well are not aware of what is really happening in the fashion industry. Well, we cannot blame them because what is happening now, we only see the outcome or the products. So we don't really see what's behind the label. So that's what we would want to do to promote awareness to all the consumers. And on the other hand, the sustainable fashion brands in Singapore, we also have been talking with the different brands here, and all of them are all in different places, and most of the people are not aware of them. So we would want to create a platform for these brands in order for them to be in the market and accessible to the consumer. So we will be acting as a bridge between the consumer and the sustainable fashion brands. So the vision is to promote and advance the sustainable fashion industry in Singapore and to gather all the people who are working in the industry. It can be the manufacturers, retailers, designers, to have a conversation of where we can move forward in promoting the sustainable fashion, which is more responsible and conscious community. So Connected Threads Asia is the official country coordinator of Fashion Revolution. So some of you here have been with the Fashion Revolution event. So just to let you know what is Fashion Revolution, it's a global campaign to commemorate the Rana Plaza collapse where 1,300 people died. So it's also a celebration for all the people who are doing good, they want to do a positive impact in the industry. So we will be working hand in hand with Fashion Revolution and Connected Threads Asia. Yeah. So that's pretty much it. So if you guys would want to know more about Connected Threads Asia, you can visit our website at www.connectedthreadsasia.com, or you can talk to us, me and Agatha, we're very friendly, or you can follow us on Facebook, where you can keep yourself posted on all the upcoming events that we have. Yes, you will see more of us, whether you like it or not. Yeah. Yep, so we will proceed to the film screening, which I'm sure most of you are here because of that. So this is some of the recognition that they receive for the Cotton Road. So Cotton Road uncovers the transnational movement of cotton, which like from USA to China, and the condition, the workers' lives in a conventional cotton supply chain or fashion chain. Yeah, so hope you like it, and if you have any questions, you can reserve it, and when we have the panel discussion again.
I guess most of us, when we buy a product, how do we know that, yes, this is there a certification that says, yes, I'm organic, or I'm fair trade, or I'm ethical? I mean, Dragos, you studied Etrican. We've already gone through a lot of certification.
We did, yeah. We started in 2009, and when we started actually, we started precisely because of what you mentioned, because we started with this idea, there is a budding eco-fashion movement going on in Europe, there's quite a bit of it in the US, but there was very little around Asia, right? So, at the same time, on the other side, if you look at the production cycle, a lot of the raw material that goes into what people generally describe as eco-fashion actually comes from this part of the world. So it's a bit of a disjointed movement there, right? As you can see, right, these guys make the stuff in China, but most of it gets sold in the US. So we figured, let's try and do it here in Southeast Asia. Myself and my partner were in Japan at the time. We decided on Singapore for a number of factors. I won't bore you with that. But one thing we wanted to do is we wanted to make sure we tried to the best of our abilities as a small label to cover all aspects of what we thought of as ethical, sustainable production. And we started by allowing ourselves to admit that you can't actually have proper sustainable clothing at this point in time. The notion of sustainability is something that we have to chase in the fashion industry, but it's not something that we can reach straight away. There are just too many obstacles in the way that the production is set up. And I think that bit where the general manager of the factory talked about some of that is very, very important, probably the highlight of this film for me. Because there's a lot of things that come into play there, right? How they go around some of the challenges you have, especially as a small brand, to ensure that you're doing things properly. Certification is one, you mentioned that, right? And we've gone through a few iterations, and we looked at a few certification bodies, and we settled on the GOT certification, which stands for Global Organic Textile Standard. These guys are based in Germany, and they've developed a unified set of criteria that covers, and that's one of the main reasons we work with them, covers both the social and the environmental aspect of production. So they look at things, and very importantly, it covers it throughout the supply chain, from the raw cotton all the way to when it reaches the shop, right? Actually, that's not entirely accurate. All the way to the point to which it's shipped towards the shop, because they don't look at the shipping side of things, which is also a factor, right? So these GOTS people, what they do is they make sure no heavy chemicals are used in the production. Bleach is oxygen-based, no formaldehyde, things of the sort, like a lot of the chemical components. And that's not only in the making of the cotton itself, but also in the dyeing process and so on. On the social side of things, they're looking at some of the things that were touched upon at least tangentially on the documentary. So they look at no forced labor, no child labor, proper working hours, minimum wage requirements being satisfied, safe working environment, things like that. And they use criteria from standard labor conventions, and they look at applying that to the factories that they work with. They have a network of certifiers around the world. It gets pretty technical. The GOTS manual is a few hundred pages long, but at the same time that's a good thing because it means it's pretty comprehensive. So that's our choice of certification.
How do you manage it? I'm sure it's very challenging to manage. You saying that it's over 100 pages long, but there are so many layers. So how do you manage that? I mean, looking at the movie just now, there's a disconnect between the designer and the manufacturer, and then further along the line.
That's right. And for a small label like us, in particular, that was a major concern from the very beginning. Okay, we're going to work with a particular set of suppliers, but how do you know they do what they say? I mean, there's the certification body, of course, and God's tries to do this quite strictly. They have a rigorous set of inspectors that are spread around the world that will actually go and check the sites and all those kind of things. The reality of it is, to be perfectly honest, that you can't be 100% sure unless you have people on the ground to check the factories on your behalf. And obviously we don't have the resources to do that, right? So we have to rely on the work that Fox is doing to cover those things. But we do one more thing now, and I know that you can interject. One thing that we do to try to minimize the risk of this happening is we make it a policy not to work with agents. We work directly with the factories, right? So a lot of garment production, a lot of textile, and not only textile, other products as well. The way it works is you contact an agent, a merchant or an agency, say in Tilburg, because we work with Indian producers, right? And those guys say, okay, so what do you want? Okay, you want 500 pieces of this, and that. Okay, and they source, what's your criteria? This is your criteria, and they source a bunch of factories to do it. Kind of like these guys, you see, those get inside orders from all these people, right? We try as much as we can, and now, thankfully, we're doing that 100%, to work directly with the factories. So we would be calling this general manager straight and talking to her directly. So we don't go through agents. That minimizes the risk of things going by the wayside, because if an agent takes an order, they will take it. They won't turn it down, right? If they don't have your boss factory to do your order for you because they're busy with another order, they'll just send it somewhere else, and you will never know, right? If you send it directly to the factory has more chances to tell you, look, we can't take this order right now, we're too busy. There's still possibility for abuse. They can still take the order and send it to like their friend's factory and do it. You can't tell 100%, but you can do as much as you can. That's all right.
Pascal, do you have any views on that, in terms of how you manage your supply chain?
Yeah, absolutely. So, as I said previously, we are working with organizations in Brazil. So, first in Amazonia for collecting the white rubber. We are working with 40 families there, and they are helped by an NGO, which helps them to improve the process and to earn more money. They don't just collect the rubber, but they transform it. So we try to improve their standard of living through improving their work, and that is so. For rubber, that's it. For cotton, it's northeast of Brazil, and it's quite the same. We have two associations working with us, and we are working with 300 families which make organic cotton, so that means no chemicals, no pesticides, and so they are helping them to grow that cotton and to collect it, and so we can rely on them for this process until the factory. And at the factory, we are working with kind of a fair trade factory. That means that people have good salaries, they have medical insurance, they are all in a union, so it's very important for us. The girl in the movie told that nobody is protecting her, nobody is helping them, so we try to work only with the factory, indirect, of course, that I don't know, maybe protects the workers. So at a minimum, I guess we never know, but we every 6 months we visit that factory, and we are very happy with what we see. So that's it.
Right, thank you. Just before I open the floor for questions, I just want to ask you if a certain brand wants to become sustainable, what would you think would be the biggest challenge to overcome? Just going by your experience.
For us, I don't think there's one single most important thing. think that being fair, being ethical to the workers, to the families, that's a very, very large thing.
I think it very much depends on the size of the brand. If a large brand like H&M, which you mentioned, wants to become sustainable, it's very, very difficult because these guys have networks of thousands of factories around the world. Switching that overnight, it's no walk in the park, right? And I don't know why they turned it down, but it's a pity because I happen to know they actually are trying, from what I understand. They're trying hard, H&M. And they're doing it sometimes off the eyes of the press. That's another thing about large brands. If they try to make a move in the right direction, they're going to have every news media outlet out there going and nitpicking, saying, why you haven't done this, right? That means you're greenwashing, right? So what you find is a lot of large brands actually don't even publicize their efforts to go towards sustainability for fear of getting demonized in the media because it will just backfire, right? So that's for large brands. For smaller brands, the production side is still very challenging, right? But it's easier because you're starting from scratch. So you're not looking at switching over factories and changing production standards and all that. You can already start with a clean slate in that way. Still challenging, but easier. What the small brands have as a challenge, of course, is the marketing side of things. How do you put your message across to the audience because you don't have the resources to actually explain to the audience what a great little thing you have put together, right? So that the big brands have that, but they have the difficulties with making the switch. The small brands, it's easier for them to do the production, but more difficult to get the message out there. So it really depends.
Right, thank you. Okay, so I'm going to open up the floor for questions. If you have a question, please raise your hand, and then someone will come around with a mic. Just make your questions short and sweet, and yeah, if you want, you can also introduce yourself as well. Okay, anybody? Questions?
Hi, I'm Molly. The question is for Pascal. Pascal, why did you choose to manufacture in Brazil, and how did you find the NGOs you're working with?
The reason is simple. Both founders of VEJA were in travel in South America, and they were working for big firms like H&M, and so just to make a report on sustainability in company. And they were really disappointed with what they saw in the factories, etc. And so they just discovered that in Brazil there were all ingredients to make a perfect shoe. So that means cotton, rubber, etc. So they started in Brazil because they knew that they can find all these ingredients and materials there. And so it was just a matter of making the thing all in Asia, all in Brazil, so it was a practical reason. And so that's it.
How are the NGOs found?
So when they went to Amazonia, they just worked with one person, then two, then a rubber tapper, and they just helped them to create an association. So it was not an association before. It was one guy, two guys, three guys, and they created a team. So it's the same in northwest of Brazil. It's a lot of families working on their own, and they say, no, we have to work together. We will have more power, and when we are sending, an engineer, we will help everybody. So, and then they can win more money. So it's really, we created this association with them.
So how long did that whole process take for you to actually come up with the whole, the network that you just described, and then to be able to come up with a production? How long did that take, do you know?
During 1 year, they just started with a very 10 years ago. They are working only with that few families. After 4 years, there was first association for cotton, and after 6 years, there was an association for rubber tapper. So after 10 years, we have 3 associations which are working with us. So I think to work very small, 1 year or 2 years is okay. To work bigger, I think that 5 years is it's a good time to do it.
Anybody else? Questions?
So I have a question for any one of you is, do you actually study the social impact of the people that you work with in terms of, like, say, Pascal, that you talk about the Brazilian people that you work with? Do you study the social impact on the lives of these so-called beneficiaries? And I think the other question I have is, apart from the retail that we have, I think it's very, obviously for brands like Ross, it's always hard to keep it sustainable. Are there other avenues that you look at to make it sustainable besides the retail? Is there anything else that you do?
So there's a question. First
The first
question.
one was about the social impacts, how we can measure it, or it's very difficult. We don't have any study about that. What we can only do is follow them with this association, and the fact is that we pay, for example, twice the price of the market for 1 kg of cotton. So we can only say that they are well paid for what they are doing. So we hope it's improving their standard of living, but we don't have any study today to tell it. It's the same for rubber tapa. We know that we pay twice the price of the market, and that's it. We can only see when we go to Brazil that seems to be okay, and but we are no association making study for us. We don't know that today.
And your second question was?
More about the revenue part of the retail. Is there any other avenues that you all can use to grow your revenue part of it?
Well, we don't get paid for doing this kind of thing, that's for sure. I'm just joking. I actually think this kind of work is very important for what we do, because I was talking earlier about small brands getting the message out, and sitting down and talking to 40, 50 people at a time is something that we do a lot, as much as we can anyway. Talking about avenues, spreading the message. Revenue avenues, it's hard in an industry that's already very niche in Singapore. We do to some extent. What we do is we do customized apparel for organizations. So we have a B2B model that we work on as well, in addition to our consumer retail clothing line. So say you have a company that wants to organize an event that's eco-friendly. What do? You probably get a bunch of people together to pretend to act green. Apologies for the skepticism. And one of the things that you might be doing is you might actually be printing t-shirts for that event. And you might want to do them in organic cotton. So that's one thing that we do to augment our revenue in addition to consumer retail.
Something that I would like to add on, we saw from the movie that cost is a very important part of this whole process. And the less it costs, the better it is. In the comments, better. In ensuring sustainability, in ensuring fair trade, and a good level of ethics, the cost isn't as low as what you see. There's actually a reasonable amount, especially if you add in the agents, the middlemen, the people who trade in all the fabrics. And on my end, on the retail side of things, we've got to balance the general cost of what people are willing to pay versus what's fair. At the end of the day, how much does the person want to pay? We don't know. So it's a lot of trial and error. Okay, is this too high, too low? How much margin or how little margin are we willing to accept? And at the end of the day, I think out here in Asia, the market is still in its infancy. There's not as much awareness as there could be. There are no associations, there are no bodies protecting the general worker, the blue collar, the less educated. And so retailers who do the organic or the green or the sustainable route have to make a decision. If I want to do this, this is something that we've got to think about. We won't have the massive margins that other people who sell clothes may have, because it's manufactured cheaply, and it's a choice that we make. And we try and educate the consumers, but it's easier said than done. Most people come in and they go, oh, very pretty. How much? That's it. We tell them that, oh, it's organic and it's certified this and that, and they go, oh, okay, thank you. And then that's all.
I just want to add something. I think that for big brands working cheaply, they are spending a lot of money in advertising, and I think that's really the point where companies like us can make it not too expensive in the retail, because almost 8 or 9% of the product is spent on marketing and advertising. So for VEJA, we don't make advertising at all. So all this money is put in production, wages, and so after we don't have the same weapon to sell, but we know that the price is good for it's not more expensive than Adidas or Reebok, etc., because we don't make that advertising. So I think the price can be good, can be fair, and we just have to fight a bit more to make a brand.
Brand aspiring to be sustainable has. We have exactly the same challenge. And it's very typical in the clothing industry for the cost of production to be about 10% max of the cost of the garment when it reaches the shelves, right? In our case, we're looking at 25-30% production cost. How do we do that? Kind of the same way. We don't really pay for advertisement, and we keep our margins low. So that means it's harder for us to grow. There's various challenges that come with that, right? But it's a conscious decision one has to make, because there's another thing that made us start this. A lot of eco-fashion, especially in the beginning, was priced highly, just like you see with organic produce in terms of food and all that kind of stuff. You have that issue, and precisely because of the food market, I think to some extent, and the body care market, over time, I think organic products have come to be perceived as luxury products, right? I think a lot of us think, when we think about buying organic, myself included, I have to admit, when we think about buying organic, we think, okay, that's just for people that can afford it, kind of thing, right? And we wanted that not to be the case. So trying to keep pricing, just as you mentioned, as much as possible on par with brands that function in the same range, even though they are all larger. And in order for us to keep the pricing accessible and to make it possible for regular people to buy, regular people meaning people that are not very rich, to have access at least, to have the option of buying a product that tries to be sustainable. We just have to take a margin account on our profit margin. That's as simple as it gets. Yeah.
Very interesting points. We have time for 2 more questions. Lady, please.
So I'm really happy that you're doing what you're doing, and the ethical part is very important for a lot of people, I think. My question is, do you feel a responsibility to not sell more products than people actually need? Because it looks like there's all the clothing in the world that we'll need for the next 100 years, I think. So is that part of sustainability?
Yeah, definitely. However, you're not going to get people to stop buying clothes overnight. There's one brand that comes to mind that does this very successfully, and I think what they do, right? What are they called? Right? The Patagonia. Thank you. Patagonia, right? And I think what it is that they do is they spin it from a marketing angle. So what they go and say, they have a campaign that went out there and say, please don't buy more of our clothes. Just buy less of it, right? They can get away with it, and the reason why they can get away with it is because they have a very devout customer base, right? Consuming less in general is part of what we should be doing to deal with sustainability. It's actually probably the first thing we should be doing. Switching some of the customers over from mainstream products to products that are slightly more sustainable is part of that process, as we see it. Yes, I can go out there and tell people you should buy less clothing. I'm happy to do that, right? But the first thing I have to do is tell them, if you do buy the clothing, make sure what you're buying makes a bit more sense to the environment and to people that are actually making that piece of garment, right? So when you're producing in four-figure numbers, like the factory that you're selling, you don't have the luxury to go and tell your customers, don't buy my clothing, right? Because you're putting yourself out of business, unless you spin it in a marketing angle, right? And that's, for me personally, the challenge of doing this is the fact that you have to make business realities and the reasons why it started doing what you started doing in the first place, come together at some point. And that's not always easy, right? I don't buy a lot of clothing myself, right? I would be a worse customer for my brand. But in order to get to where you want to be, you have to do that. And that's the issue with doing this as a business, right? And it's a long process, and you have to realize there's compromising along the way. It holds the same with the production chain I was touching upon earlier, right? I know that there's no way, 100%, for me to know that my clothing is produced properly. I would love to have 100% certainty in that, right? But it's just not possible unless I live there. And if I live there, there's nobody to sell the clothing over here, right? So we have to make compromises. It's called doing business.
And so, at Touch Talks, we don't just do clothing, so I'm going to move a little bit away from this one. It's still touching on sustainability. We do yoga mats, yoga props as well. And what we've tried to do, and we've done that twice, was to do a little bit of the social elements. Not everybody can afford to buy a yoga mat. Not everybody has the ability to splurge in excess of $100 per mat. You can go to Watson's, you can buy a $10, $15 something. But what we then did was to pair up one group of people with another group. And we put the word out. Okay, you guys out there, if you've got something that you want to donate to an organization that wants to conduct regular yoga classes, but they aren't able to buy their own mats, give that to us, we'll facilitate that. And it's kind of it helps things move around. It's like a clothes swap, except this was a mat swap. And speaking of clothes swap, these guys do that on a fairly regular basis. When I was growing up, we had amongst friends clothes swap as well. It gave us new wardrobes without spending a cent. And it looks different when your friend wears it than when you wear it. But the reality is exactly as what Dragos was saying. You've got to balance running a business with how you sell it and sustainability angle. We don't tell people, come in every week. I do tell them, buy sustainably. We've got a label that uses recycled plastic bottles, takes plastic off from the earth into a clothing. It's not the most sustainable, it's not the most green fabric, but at least it takes something out of the dump.
Okay, I think there was a question over there.
So thanks very much for sharing. And my question is related to this, and you might have answered part of it as well. So I think you guys are doing a really great job in terms of sourcing for sustainable materials and from ethical sources as well. whether you feel that as a producer, whether would you think of sustainable, not just as the sourcing aspect of it, but in terms of the system as a whole, like such as looking at the closed loop supply chain. Because we saw from the documentary that so much waste is being dumped because of like fast fashion and so on. So would you consider, like say, a circular economy model to use whatever waste that is produced as a resource back into your business?
It's a good point you're making. Sustainability in a clothing brand isn't just about the production. Just that, as it isn't just about the raw material, right? Just making things out of organic cotton or bamboo or recycled PET, right? Doesn't make you a sustainable brand. It just makes you a brand that uses sustainable materials. So yes, all those aspects are part of the equation. Some of them are easier to settle than others. Some of them are easier to communicate than others, right? It just happens to be the case that the production and the material that you use is something that's relatively easy to communicate. We try as much as we can to cover other sides of the production as well. Part of the reason why we're here and we work with producers in India is because we don't want to send stuff halfway across the globe. It would have been a lot easier for us to incorporate in Europe, for example, right? It would have been even easier for us to stay in Japan, which is where we were at the time. But we wanted to be into an area where it allows us to do that. And it just happens so that Singapore has free trading agreements with both China and India, which are the major organic cotton producers in the region. And it's halfway between those two, right? Plus other things about Singapore that made it a good market to start in, or so we thought. So yes, that's one example. Another example is logistics, and we struggle with this a lot. In order for us to, okay, the easy thing about logistics, it makes sense to have as many orders as possible lumped together and shipped, right? It makes sense in terms of carbon footprint, but it makes sense in terms of economics as well. I won't be hypocritical about it, right? Because your shipping cost goes down. So we try to lump orders together and styles together as much as we can. But of course, it's not always possible, right? But we try to. And I mentioned we do B2B orders as well. When we work with customers that want customized apparel, we try to push their deadline so that they match together as much as possible so you can lump those things together. Another thing about logistics that we're struggling with is packaging, right? The garments, by and large, the garments will be coming there individually packaged, right? And that needs to be so for good reasons. Sometimes if they come over by ship, during the shipping process, if the garment gets wet, this is organic cotton, you don't have any chemicals to keep it in a certain condition. The garment gets wet, it will mold. We've had batches of production that were moldy orders, right? So we'd very much like to be able, for example, to have everything shipped in one box, in one big bag, so we reduce the amount of plastic that we use, right? But we can't because of these kind of reasons. So we're looking at ways to kind of mitigate that, right? So we're testing, especially with customized orders, B2B orders. We're testing at least having like medium-sized bags or 5 or 10 garments go in, so you can at least reduce the amount of plastic that way. There's things you can do on the marketing or operations side, small things, but maybe they won't make a lot of difference, but at least it makes a difference to you when you're planning your business. So our name cards are all printed on recycled paper, for example. We try to get away from using leaflets as much as we can and try to put the information online, if it's at all possible, right? Those kind of things. The reality is that every stage of the business process, from raw material all the way to the time you reach his customer, you can make changes. The next step is to take the customer and get them involved in the process. And we'd love to be able to do that, but we don't have the volume right now to, or maybe we don't have the right idea. We're very open to ideas. If you have ideas about how we can close the loop on production with the kind of volumes that we have, kindly email me. But we don't, at the moment, we don't have a good solution to get the customers to return the products, have a proper incentive for them, and for us to actually do something meaningful with those products. There's just not enough volume. So we're looking at ways to close that loop as well.
Pascal, you copied a few points as well, because I know you do made to order, is that right?
Yeah, actually, we only produce one order. That means we have zero stock. It's a bit difficult for me when I'm selling to tanks, for example, because they are a bit surprised that we don't do as all other brands. But like this, we don't waste resources. And I wanted to say that sustainability is not only about production, what you say, it's also how you're working. So, for example, in France, electricity of our office is ecological electricity. We don't use the national company, French national company. So it's a mean of looking at things. In our storage in France is made by an association which helps people to start a new life with having a new job. So we try to make it's a social responsibility, you know. So sustainability is not only about organic cotton and white rubber. It's all the chain and how you work with people. And you said it before very well. It's organic, yes, it's cool, but I think the most important is the man and the woman you are working with, and it's I think respect for everyone on the production chain. That's it.
So most of the brands that we bring in, it's exactly as what Pascal was saying. The production starts 6 months to a year ahead of time. They give us a rough idea, a skeleton. Okay, this is the projected design, the colors that we're going to manufacture. This is what it's going to look like roughly. We don't have the pictures yet, not quite. Can you tell us what you would like to order, how many pieces? So what we do as a retailer is we look at our magic crystal ball and go, hi, Christmas, what do you think people want to buy? What do you think people will like? What kind of colors do you think are going to sell? And there's a lot of that going on. And it's very tiring. Especially when you have to go through that with a multi-label store that we are. We go through many, many orders, talk to different manufacturers, and plan. Somewhere down the line after the order is delivered to us, and yes, a lot of the brands actually come to us, and sometimes sustainable packaging, sometimes a bit less sustainable, but we throw out so much packaging, either in plastic or in paper, cardboard boxes. There's a lot of that. But yeah, getting back to this, if it sells well, we go back to the manufacturer, we go back to the brands, and then ask, oh, this one did well. Do you have more stock? And half the time they'll come back, oh, I'm sorry, this one sold out. Or, oh, hang on, you're looking for what size? Extra small in your company? Yeah, okay, that one works. So hidden is sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't work. We under order, we over order. It's really, really a headache. And we're stressing all the time, we're fretting that we might have over ordered, because then it's going to be sitting stock, and then it ends up, we don't know where. Has to be given off somewhere.
Yeah, you're one of the patient retailers, right? Taking the same point from the point of view of the brand, that's a huge challenge we have, right? We work with Zalora, for example, right? And if we put a collection out on Zalora and it sells well, they'll be on our backs. Not to use other parts of the body to describe it. They'll be on our backs constantly, right? Because they're used to working with fast fashion brands that bring out styles every single week, right? So if they hit on a particular set of styles that sells well, they'll be like, we want another one next week. Like, it takes about 6 months for us to make a collection, so I'm afraid we don't have any more for you guys next week, right? And that's a very big challenge for I think for us personally. I don't know if it replicates across the industry, but for us personally, it's a very big challenge to grow Because if you do find retailers that push your product properly, they are used to a particular style of clothes making that is just not how we work. We can't work like that simply because the way the production team is set up doesn't allow us to do that. We can't go back to our small factory and say, turn over 5,000 more styles tomorrow, right? In a week, right? They're just gonna laugh, right? So that's a very big challenge though, because a lot of the successful retailers, that's exactly how they work, right? And if you want to partner with the successful retailers, they will expect you as a brand to work the same way. And if you can't work the same way, they lose interest afterward, right? So we find that to be a very big obstacle in growing the brand as such. Sorry.
Okay, just a little add on. And another aspect of sustainability for our web owners, because we do online as well, we struggle with how we're going to do the packaging. We struggle with how are the customers going to perceive us if we don't wrap too much. Maybe the clothes will get wet. Maybe the things will spill out if we don't package it enough. It's like, we did get some customers who fed back, oh, maybe you should wrap more with plastic. We try very hard not to do that because it's really not good for the environment. So we wrap as little as possible and try to ensure that the delivery will not be in wet weather conditions, it won't get spilled, it won't be left in the rain, things like that. A lot of small things you have to think about. It's conscious decisions, like we were saying about printing on recycled paper. Our name cards come from recycled paper as well. There's only one printing company that does that, and with sustainable inks. So it's looking for things like that.
So as you can all see, sustainable fashion, there are lots of aspects that can be covered, and it's a very complex issue. I'm afraid we'll have to close the session because we've only got this hall until 10 o'clock. But the conversation can still be carried on outside if you'd like to speak to any of our panelists. Pascal Villepin from VEJA Asia, Wuen from Touch, and Dragos Necula from Etrican. Okay, I'd really like to thank all of you here, panelists, audience members, and also to thank our partners, OneMaker Group, Fashion Revolution, Design Singapore for supporting us, and National Design Centre for giving us this wonderful place to hold our event. Please do look out on Facebook and on our website for our up and coming events towards the end of the year. And I hope you have a lovely night. Thank you very much for coming.